Good evening. It's time for Down to the Wire here on Vegas Insider. Kevin Rogers with you here on this Tuesday night. The Major League Baseball playoffs underway. The dogs are barking out of the gate, and we'll tell you about that. And we have two games coming up tonight. Guardians and the Yankees in New York. Also, the Padres and Dodgers out in L.A. Bruce Marshall is going to join us coming up in just a few moments, talk about some tech trends for college football and the NFL for the upcoming week. And before we get to our best bet of our first best bet tonight, we got two of them actually. NHL season starts tonight as well. You have two games, Lightning and Rangers, also Golden Knights and Kings. So starting to transition now into now NHL tonight. NBA starts next week with baseball now in the postseason. So the old circle of life with sports. It's good to see some other of the fall sports now starting up. All right, want to tell you about Kyle Hunter, our handicapper heat check tonight. That's who we're going to focus on. And Kyle has been absolutely on fire. You can find him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. He continues his impressive run in Major League Baseball. 5 of his last 6 that he has won, and also a pretty good college football handicapper as well. You can save $10 on Kyle's MLB playoffs top plays by clicking on the link in the description below. And the $10 discount will be applied during checkout. You can find that ad on our homepage at Vegas Insider. That's your handicapper heat check. Remember, stay hot, bettors. Now, for our first best bet of the night, we're going to have take a shot at the Cleveland Guardians against the Yankees tonight. Now, I don't feel as great about this when I see the Phillies beat the Braves. They outlasted them 7-6 today. A game that got a little dicey at the end. Matt Olson hit a 3-run homer for Atlanta in the 9th, and the Braves had 1 out and still an opportunity to tie the game, but the next 2 batters did not get on base. So the Phillies held off the Braves 7-6. They cashed as heavy dogs today. And right now the Mariners are beating the Astros as heavy dogs, and they ran out Justin Verlander in that game. So see 3 straight dogs win. Could be a tall task, but the Guardians are 16-1 in Cal Quantrill's last 17 starts, which is very impressive. He obviously didn't pitch in the wild card series against Tampa Bay. Cleveland's pitching was great in that series, and I understand that you're going from the Rays, who struggled down the stretch offensively, to the Yankees, and you're facing Garrett Cole now, and Garrett Cole has had success against Cleveland, but still, this is Garrett Cole's first home playoff start as a member of the Yankees, which is very interesting. He made 4 starts with the Yankees, 1 in Cleveland in 2020, and then the next 2 against Tampa Bay in the wild card, or in the not in the wild card, the divisional series, but that was out in San Diego. Remember when there were no home games in the LDS and the World Series due to the pandemic? So Garrett Cole then started at Fenway Park last year against the Red Sox and lost to them in the wild card. So no home starts yet for Garrett Cole as a Yankee. First time tonight, heavy favorite against the Guardians. I'm going to take Cleveland against New York tonight, and that'll be our best bet for Major League Baseball. All right, let's now transition to football, and let's go to Bruce Marshall, handicapper, who has had the tech trends going not only this season, but for years on end. And he goes through every single game, whether it is SEC, the MAC, it doesn't matter. He has all the tech trends. And Bruce, it's good to see you again. Let's get right into it. I see you're wearing your Phillies hat, and the Phillies, it looked like on Friday, down 2-0 in the 9th. Could be like, oh, well, maybe they'll just get swept by the Cardinals. But quickly on them, your thoughts on what they've done in the postseason so far?
We haven't had much chance to wear this in recent years, Kevin, especially in the playoffs. But I think things are looking pretty good, especially since, Wheeler and Nola now are to come up. I mean, they were wondering about Suarez in the 3 spot there, and they may have used, Syndergaard had things worked out differently in the St. Louis series. But it's all lining up pretty well for Philadelphia now, and they've got home field, or they've been playing well on the road. And these short series, I mean, things can happen. I mean, a 5-game series, that's shorter than a 7-game series. So, I mean, they're in this thing right now, and they're hot, and they're very dangerous. And their frontline pitching is good. We'll see if that bullpen hangs in there. A little bit of trouble today, and got a little dicey on game 1 against St. Louis, too, in the 9th inning. But they're finding ways to win, and they look very dangerous to me.
Yeah, and Atlanta's bats, some of the big names struggled down the stretch this season, so we'll see how they look very frustrated. Some at bats today, so we'll see how that continues in Atlanta. All right, Bruce, some college football now. TCU, they outlasted Kansas on Saturday. They remain undefeated. Now they get Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State Cowboys. I don't think a lot of people thought this would be a big matchup in the Big 12, just like people didn't think TCU Kansas would be a big matchup, and now TCU has played their way into the top spot in the Big 12. What tech trends do you have on this game between the Horned Frogs and the Cowboys?
Yeah, Kevin, this has been a very interesting home-oriented series in recent years. So the host team has won and covered the last four. Now, last year, uh, Mike Gundy really ran up the score on the Frogs in Stillwater, 63-17. That was the second game after Patterson had been dismissed in November. Jerry Kill came in, as you remember, as an interim, and they won a big upset in that first game, post-Patterson against Baylor, and they were very flat the next game. So you sort of excuse that, and last year was kind of a mess anyway for the Frogs. It's totally different with Sonny Dykes right now. That was a very good win at Kansas last week, even though Daniels went out. I think it's time we start to think about Max Duggan as a potential Heisman candidate here. I've always kind of liked him. He's almost impossible to bring down in the pocket. He's a really good runner. He's had a lot of big runs this year, and he's obviously flourishing in this new Dykes offense. So, and I think that'll work some this week because Oklahoma State, although they're unbeaten, not playing defense like they did last year when Jim Knowles was the coordinator. They lost most of their back seven. Now, Derek Mason comes in as a new coordinator, but their numbers have not been that great on the stop end, which isn't much of a surprise. We thought that would drop off somewhat, but Sanders is going to have a big game to trade points with Duggan. I don't think he can do it, so I'm leaning to TCU here. And again, the home team has been the way to look in this series lately.
Now let's flip over to Stanford and Notre Dame, Bruce. And Notre Dame, after the slow start, playing a little bit better of late. They had that win over Cal and knocking out BYU in Las Vegas last week. So Notre Dame slowly getting it going. Now they get Stanford, who's been a bit of a mess. They lost to Oregon State over the weekend. What do you have here with Stanford and Notre Dame?
Well, Stanford, boy, it's been a tough go. And they did finally get a point spread cover last week. But boy, that is scant reward for them and making them feel better the way they lost that game to Oregon State. The news there was, Kevin, though, they had dropped 11 straight versus the spread dating back a year, back to early October, and that win over Oregon last year. So they'd gone a year without covering a point spread. So they did finally get one of those last week. But they lost the game very bitterly, and still indicators are pointing downward for the tree. This series in recent years when they played, they skipped 2020, of course, but the last three times they've played, it's been all Irish, one uncovered each, all wins by 21 or more. Last year it was 45-14. At the end of the season, Stanford was having a lot of trouble last year, I know. And that turned out to be Brian Kelly's last game as Notre Dame coach because, they changed. He went to LSU before the bowl game, and Marcus Freeman was already installed before the Oklahoma State game down in the Fiesta. So recent years, it's been all Notre Dame in this series. They look like they straightened some things out this season. Stanford, even getting that W on the spread side last week, it doesn't make them feel better because they lost that game in the last seconds, bitterly so, to Oregon State in that long pass. All the technicals point against Stanford here. You're laying a lot of points with Notre Dame, but I don't know technically if there's another way to look aside from the Fighting Irish here, Kevin.
Let's now stay. I'm not going to say stay in the Pac-12 because obviously Notre Dame's on the Pac-12, but let's go to Utah and USC. And Bruce, now for the first time, Lincoln Riley's an underdog as a Trojan, and USC undefeated. They go to Salt Lake City. Utah, the number dropped in that last week. UCLA played very well in that game, and Utah tried to come back, but UCLA pulled away in that game. Now Utah's favored here at home against USC. The underdog has won outright the last 3 years in this series. Utah beat USC last year. We know the Trojans. We can give them a mulligan because last year they had a lot of problems. But what do you have with Utah and USC in this big Pac-12 showdown?
Yeah, Utah probably, shouldn't have been an underdog in that game in retrospect last year because they're much better than SC. It's just the way the schedule sort of sequence. And that was when Utah was picking up a lot of momentum early October last year, and they really rolled through the rest of the season. Now, you're right. First time Lincoln Riley, an underdog with the Trojans. First time the Trojans have played a ranked team thus far. I mean, you're seeing UCLA and others get needled about their schedule thus far. How about SC? The best win, I guess, is Washington State last week. I'm not even sure that's a top 40 team. Now, this is a legitimate top 20 team they've got to play this week. This has been a tough place for them to play, though. throwing out something. 2020, you almost want to throw out that entire season, especially this game that SC played 2 years ago in Salt Lake City. There were no fans in attendance. Utah's season was delayed a couple of weeks, even longer than the Pac-12 delayed its start of the season in 2020 because of COVID issues. So throw that out. The 3 times previous to that, SC lost here in Salt Lake City. So this is a pretty good home field for Kyle Whittingham. It has been for a long time. They're 11-4 versus the spread since last season. Actually, since Rising came in at quarterback, 5-1 versus the spread their last 6 here in Salt Lake City. Physically, this they're going to challenge SC a lot differently than anybody else has. As far a little bit Oregon State that gave SC some problems, but in the pits they're going to be able to go straight at SC. UCLA has a little bit of a different offense than SC. They knock you off your pins. SC, it's complete finesse what they do there. I think Utah can handle that like they did last year. It's a different Trojan team, I know, with Caleb Williams, but Utah, to me, there's angles here to like the Utes at home. Well, let's see if USC can step up. And home side, when they're in Salt Lake City, Utah, that's been a pretty good bet in recent years.
All right, let's go to the SEC now, Bruce. And obviously, everyone's focusing on Alabama, Tennessee, but I want to talk about Mississippi State, Kentucky. And Will Levis, obviously, a question mark for Kentucky. He didn't play in the loss to South Carolina last week. He goes, Kentucky kind of goes. But Mississippi State with the Pirate, I mean, he continues to deliver. And Mike Leach has been great. They're favored against the Wildcats this week on the road. What do you have with Mississippi State and Kentucky?
Well, no Edward Snowden. That talking about Mark Stoops. I mean, if you could keep that quiet in the SEC that your quarterback is hurt, and nobody knew about that, the foot injury, and here he shows up before the game coming out on crutches. I mean, listen, they should bring him into the White House to plug leaks there in the Defense Department if he could keep a secret like that. And you went from a quarterback who might be the first taken in the draft next year to a kid who'd never played. They fumbled their first snap. So that's a negative for Kentucky. Now that also, if Levis doesn't come back this week, this could preclude what has been a pretty strong series trend here. Kevin, the home team has won and covered the last 7 times these two have met. Now, these are the crossover foes. These two play each other every year in the SEC. We'll see if that continues when they change the schedule in a couple of years when Texas and Oklahoma come in. It's been a huge home team series. Now, normally that would bode well for Kentucky here, but without Levis, I'm not sure that applies this week. And how about the Pirate? You mentioned him. He's covered 6 of his last 7 as a visitor in the SEC. So, I mean, you've got a trend almost as strong the other way, suggesting Mississippi State. They ran the ball much better last week. They're running it more conscientiously this year, not just an afterthought. We know what Will Rogers can do. He's already the SEC's all-time pass completion leader, and he's only in his 2.5 years now as a starter. So he's going to break a record every time he gets on the field. Also, that defense is pretty good. Zach Arnett coordinates that, a Rocky Long designed influence defense on the Mississippi State side. So I think, though the series trends suggest the home team, I think there's reasons to like Mississippi State here. Plus, there's some trends there, too. Leach on the road in conference play has been an awfully good play. And even though you're laying points here, I think there's a reason because Mississippi State, to me, looks better, especially if Levis doesn't play.
Yeah, Mississippi State has played very well so far. Unfortunately, I got to look up at Alabama in the SEC West, but we'll see when they match up later in the season. All right, Bruce, let's transition to the NFL. And Thursday night, if this was the 1980s, we'd be thrilled about Washington and Chicago on Thursday night. But unfortunately, it's not the 80s. And the Commanders have struggled offensively. The Bears have had their problems on offense, even though they didn't look too bad in the second half against Minnesota on Thursday. But what do you have here with Washington and Chicago kicking off week number 6 at Soldier Field?
Wow. I guess Jeff Bezos and everybody at Amazon Prime Video can't be too happy with the NFL for giving them this semi-dumpster fire for a Thursday night game. And that's and their TV special. And that's, I think, the only way you can describe Washington right now with what blowing that game, wasting 359 yards from Carson Wentz passing last week against the Titans. You're not going to get that sort of effort every week from Wentz, and to waste one of those really hurts. So it's not going well for Ron Rivera. There were a couple of notes here. Do we really want to trust either of these teams to win the game? I'm not sure. I mean, the spread, it's about a pick'em game. The Bears have only covered 5 of their last 17, but in a pick'em game, you're just asking them to win. But neither of these teams have been winning much. In fact, since opening week combined, they've only won 1 game, and that was a close one. The Bears won against Houston. If there is a trend here that I think might supersede all others, on Thursday night in Wrigley Field, Kevin. It might be the under on the Washington side. 12-5 last 17. That's a pretty good under run. Stretches back into early last season, and we're seeing several of those totals runs like that in the NFL. A lot of them on the underside here, and Washington has been there. So I think if there's a technical angle here to look at, it's probably on the underside because that's what Washington has been doing lately. And Fields put up those. Listen, the Bears were not running the ball traditionally well last week. So much of it was on Fields. The Vikings started to play loose, and the Bears made a rally there in the third quarter. But this offense has still got a long ways to go. The under angle, to me, there's a technical trend to support it on the Washington side for sure. And I think that's the way I'd look first in this one on Thursday.
It's funny, Bruce, after we saw the ugliness last week with the Colts and the Broncos, everyone's thinking this could be an under. It's probably a shootout coming up on Thursday when it's all said and done, what we saw last week. Now let's go to Sunday. And speaking of the Colts, they get Jacksonville, the first rematch we get of the season. Jacksonville shut out Indianapolis back in week 2. And this has been a home team series. Indy can't win in Jacksonville to save themselves, but also the Colts have played well against the Jags at home. And the Colts, maybe some momentum now. And Jacksonville's got to get on track after a really bad loss to Houston at home last week. So what do you have with the Jags and Colts?
Yeah, you're right, Kevin. And there are some trends to look at here. And you're right. The Jags did not play well last week. Sort of regressed back. They haven't flushed 2021 out of their system, I guess, yet. And Trevor Lawrence regressed last week, too. But there are some trends to look at here. Generally home team, but it's also been Jag oriented. I mean, we talked, earlier in the season, we talked about their domination of the Colts down in Jacksonville at what they used to call the Gator Bowl. They beat them down there on September 18th, 24-0. They have now covered 6 straight in this series. So even if they've lost a couple games in Lucas Oil lately, they've been keeping close. And they look to be a better team this season. Indy, all those injury problems. We'll see about Jonathan Taylor, but that offensive line is a mess. There aren't the normal running lanes for him. Matt Ryan, he is getting bounced off the turf like he's a basketball. 6 sacks last week by Denver. Jacksonville sacked him 5 times in the shutout last month. This is also lending itself to another totals trend here on the underside, which is very interesting. Indy is now under 10 straight games. That dates back to last season when Wentz was still there, but the Ryan offense, with all the problems they've had with the injuries up front, Taylor being out, new receivers and all, no surprise they're not scoring points, but their defense is good enough, keeping these scores way down. They were way under the first game. The last 4 in this series have been under. So there's a team trend for Jacksonville here, but the strong ones, again, this is one of these totals trends that we've got to keep respecting as long as it keeps cashing every week, and it's on the under, especially on the Indy side. So totals over 40 early in the week, I think that's too high. So under would be the way I'd look here.
All right, Bruce, we got 2 more NFL games to look at. Buffalo, Kansas City, and we all know what happened last year in that divisional round game. Chiefs outlasted the Bills to advance the AFC Championship. Buffalo did beat Kansas City in the regular season last year, but now meeting again at Arrowhead. Chiefs won last night over the Raiders. Bills dominated the Steelers back on Sunday. Bills are a slight favorite here on the road, actually. What do you have with the Bills and the Chiefs? You think it's going to be a high-scoring game once again?
Yeah, and the Bills would love to get Kansas City at home. I guess they did in the COVID season, but nobody was there in 2020 to watch. And then they lost in the playoffs 2 years ago. They won that regular season game last year, and then they lost bitterly in the division round last year. So those last 3 games, though, have all gone over in this series. So you could certainly see these offenses scoring a lot of points in this showdown on Sunday. Kansas City has won and covered 3 of the last 4, the last 2 seasons against Buffalo. Close fashion the last time. So it's been a little bit of a lean to Kansas City in the series, though they have now dropped 3 straight versus the spread at Arrowhead after not covering last night in the Monday game against the Raiders, and earlier this season against the Chargers didn't cover, and against the Bengals last year at the end of the season. So on a little bit of a downturn, spread-wise at least at Arrowhead. I'm not sure the series trends mean an awful lot. We know Buffalo could have easily won that game in the playoff round last season. This is a big game for Buffalo. Obviously, they played several already this year, and out on the road, they've had to play at Miami, they've had to play at Baltimore, they've had to play at the Rams. They've only lost once, so they're certainly capable. But I think, over, I'm not sure they can make the total high enough between these two because Josh Allen just off a record-setting franchise passing performance last week against the Steelers. We know what Mahomes can do. 42-36 last year when they played in the playoffs, high scoring in the regular season too. So I think over might be the way to look, and recent trends in the series suggest as much.
So interesting that the Chiefs are the top team in the AFC West, second time in 3 weeks they're an underdog, which is mind-blowing
Yeah.
with Patrick Mahomes. But they won the first time against Tampa Bay. We'll see what they do on Sunday. Dallas and Philadelphia to wrap it up, Bruce. Sunday night, obviously very key game atop the NFC East. Philadelphia, the last undefeated team in the league. They didn't cover against Arizona last week in the win. And Cooper Rush, I mean, he looks really good right now. Or I mean, the numbers weren't great against the Rams, but at least they're winning under him. Eagles favored at home against the Cowboys. Dallas back on the road again. What do you have with the Cowboys and the Eagles?
Well, last year we know Dallas won and covered big both meetings, although an asterisk by the second one. It was in the last regular season game. The Eagles didn't need to win it. They had already sewn up the wild card. And Nick Sirianni rested most of his starters, and Dallas scored a lot of points and blew out the Eagles like they did early in the season in a Monday game down at Arlington. But this Cooper Rush phenomenon, this is very interesting for guys old enough like me. Well, one, I remember when Don Shula kept Johnny Unitas on the bench with the Colts long ago when Earl Morrall was winning. But after that, I think the analogy better here for Cooper Rush, the Steelers in 1976. Now, they didn't win a Super Bowl that year. The Raiders beat them in the playoffs. But a lot of us, like me, who remember them, think that may have been the best Steeler run from about the game 6 that year all the way through the end of the regular season into the playoffs. They did most of that without Terry Bradshaw. Mike Kruzak came in at quarterback after Bradshaw was hurt on a very vicious sack by Turkey Jones from Cleveland. And Pittsburgh went into a very low-risk offense mode, mostly handing the ball off to Rocky Bleier and Franco Harris, letting the Steel Curtain defense dominate. I challenge anybody, go back and look what Pittsburgh did the last 9 weeks of 1976. It was the perfect recipe. They could win like that. Dallas is playing defense not too far from a Steel Curtain-like level. And what Rush is doing, not making mistakes, relying on the ground game, this is a recipe Dallas can win with. And I think they better think about that if they want to push Dak back in there really quickly. I think for right now, they might be a little bit better off with Rush in there. Series trends, as we mentioned here, have been sort of for Dallas, at least last year. The last 3 meetings have also gone over. I don't think this one is going to get over, though. Because Dallas is slowing things down so much. I think that Philadelphia did not cover the game last week against Arizona. They're having some offensive line attrition right now. And Dallas 4-0 straight up and versus the line with Rush. Make that 5-0 if you count the Minnesota game last year with Rush. These are not gimmies. He's winning either. He's beaten both the Super Bowl teams from last year. He beat one at Minnesota. He won at the Giants a few weeks ago, and that's the only loss that G-Men have thus far. If Rush is in there, I think Dallas is worth a look to keep this thing going. So that's one trend right now. Very, very interesting with the Rush winning and covering every game he started.
And also another point too, Bruce, the game at Minnesota, Sunday night game, the game at the Giants Monday night, it's another primetime game. He's not afraid of the big lights. And I mean, he played in the MAC and look, Ben Roethlisberger played in the MAC. He came in and look at his career. I'm not going to say Cooper Rush me, Ben Roethlisberger, but he's played well enough. Everyone thought Dallas was dead after week 1, and they're obviously not. And they're one of the better teams in the NFC. So it should be an interesting game coming up on Sunday night. Bruce Marshall, you could find tech trends, college football and NFL on Vegas Insider. He has them every week, details every game. Also, you could check out Bruce's picks at Vegas Insider as well. And Bruce, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you for the knowledge, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Have a good week, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, that is Bruce Marshall. Always great work out of him. Always enjoy talking to him. Ask him about any game, and he's got plenty of information on it. So great work out of Bruce. All right. Now let's talk about BetMGM. And BetMGM, you know who they are. They're the king of sports books. You see Jamie Foxx there. You know that. So you sign up with BetMGM if you're a brand new customer. Use the bonus code VIBONUS, and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. That's VIBONUS, all one word, no spaces, and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. It's only available in the following states: Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Wyoming, and the great province of Ontario. Must be 21 years or older to wager. That is BetMGM. All right, time now for our second best bet of the night. And we'll focus on the NHL. There are 2 games tonight, and then we get really going with everything starting tomorrow. But it's an Eastern Conference Finals rematch at Madison Square Garden between the Lightning and the Rangers. New York is favored. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Lightning here as an underdog. I know this number has moved up, and New York is favored here. But when you look back at their best of 7 series last year, Lightning won in 7 games. They were down 3-2, the Lightning. Actually, they were down 2-0 after the first 2 in New York. Rangers were dogs in both those games. New York was up 3-2 after game 5. Tampa Bay won game 6 at the Garden, then won game 7 in Tampa. But I think that getting Tampa Bay here as an underdog is a good look. Great goaltending matchups. Shesterkin for the Rangers, Vasilevsky for the Lightning. And I just think the value here is with Tampa Bay. They did lose in the final last year to Colorado, but I'm going to side with Tampa Bay here as my best bet in the NHL. Plenty of those moving forward, and also NBA starts next week. So we got that going. Major League Baseball, the Mariners right now, 7-3 lead on the Astros. And let's just double check to see where they're at. 7-3, end of 7 from Houston. Logan Gilbert pitched well for the Mariners. And Justin Verlander, he had Seattle's number the entire season. And the Mariners got to him early. And it was a good job by them. So the underdogs looking good so far. Now we'll see if that continues in the night session. Guardians, Yankees in a bit from New York with Cal Quantrill and Garrett Cole on the mound. And then the Padres and the Dodgers. Mike Clevinger, he starts for San Diego. He has struggled against the Dodgers this year. I mean, everyone has, it feels like. But Clevinger has got bad numbers against the Dodgers. Julio Urias starts for L.A. And the Padres, after winning the wild card series against the Mets 2-1, now obviously a big dog. Interestingly enough, in this first day of games, all 4 home favorites, all $2 or higher. And already the Phillies won. If the Mariners hold on, you have 2 of the big favorites losing already. Granted, best of 5, so they still got a ways to go in each of those series. But good start for the underdogs so far in the Major League playoffs. Now I want to tell you about the VI app. You know what? You can get this for free. That's the best thing. The best things in life are free. Don't forget that. The Vegas Insider app, up-to-date, easy to navigate odds for every major sport. Also, the latest shows, best bet videos and podcasts, props, trends, futures, news, all in the free Vegas Insider app. You can download the Vegas Insider app right now for free on Apple or Android devices. Bet better with the Vegas Insider app. All right, I want to go over a couple props from BetMGM before we get out of here for the night games in Major League Baseball. And a couple player props here. Garrett Cole, strikeouts, 6.5, under -160. Cal Quantrill, strikeouts, 3.5, over -135. So Garrett Cole at 6.5 strikeouts. And that number shaded to the under on BetMGM. Pretty interesting. As far as outs goes, 17.5 outs for Garrett Cole. So you got to get through 6 innings there, over -185. Cal Quantrill, 15.5, under -130. So obviously, they're not thinking Quantrill's going as long, but Garrett Cole, as long as he doesn't have a bad beginning, and he's allowed 3 earned runs a lot recently in a lot of his starts. So you have that. Also, now home runs, Aaron Judge, the American League home run leader in a season, not the Major League, but just American League. His home run prop tonight, over a half. So it'd be 1, plus 220, under -350. So no home runs for Aaron Judge, -350, at least a home run, plus 220. And that's the big number everyone is focusing on tonight. Now let's quickly look at the Padres and the Dodgers as they meet up at 9:30. LA laying 250 in that game, which is, again, I mean, they've been unbelievable, but still. Julio Urias of the Dodgers, 4.5, over -120 for strikeouts. Mike Clevinger, 3.5, under -160. So we'll see how long Clevinger lasts in that game. As far as outs goes, Clevinger, 12.5 outs, under -150. Urias, 16.5, under -125. And from a player prop standpoint, as far as home runs, what's the best odds? I mean, well, it's reasonable. He's got the shortest odds, I should say. Max Muncy at plus 333 to hit a homer tonight. Mookie Betts plus 375. Freddie Freeman at plus 400. Cody Bellinger at plus 450. Now let's Trey Turner at 450 as well. For the Padres, Juan Soto at 4-1. Manny Machado plus 450. So those are the big names for home runs tonight in that Padres-Dodgers game. Those numbers courtesy of BetMGM. Again, my thanks to Bruce Marshall for hopping on tonight. Great information from Bruce. Always talking to Bruce. Always good to get him on the show. And don't forget, tomorrow, Chasing That Paper is back at 11 a.m. with Joe Osborne. You can find it on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. And also, Joe Madden will be in tomorrow on Wednesday. That's our normal slot on Down to the Wire. So tune in for Joe tomorrow night on Down to the Wire here in Vegas Insider at 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'll be back with you on Thursday night looking ahead to Washington and Chicago. The Commanders and the Bears. I'm telling you, after the Colts-Broncos last week, you're definitely have a crazy game. Like, it just has to be. Like, you're not going to have a 17-10 game. It's got to be a crazy game. We're due for that, right? So Patrick Everson will likely join us coming up on Thursday to break down the numbers for Washington and Chicago on Thursday. So we're looking forward to that. Also, we have plenty of best bet videos you could find on our YouTube channel, Vegas Insider TV, that we've released for you have Marshall, Louisiana tomorrow. Sun Belt college football begins Thursday, Washington, Chicago. Also, you have Baylor, West Virginia, that game. Friday, Navy, SMU. And Saturday, Alabama, Tennessee is already up for the NFL this weekend. Bengals, Saints, as well as Bills, Chiefs. Those videos are up. You can find them on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider TV. Spencer Ray, great job running the show as always. I am Kevin Rogers. We'll talk to you again Thursday night. Joe's in tomorrow for me, Joe Madden. So don't forget about that at 6 p.m. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. We appreciate it. And as always, best of luck with your bets.